But the rest of downtown Miami already seeing some water on the ground. And then, of course, the concern with the high winds, particularly in the high rises here. Earlier, they were getting gusts of 100 miles an hour. Want to listen in, I believe, right now to our affiliate. Let's listen in.
Officer who I just spoke to said to him in the highest areas, like in the middle of the intersection down there, he thinks that in the middle it could be getting up to his neck. So he you know, I don't think he was exaggerating. It's definitely over the waist. There's no question it's over waist deep, because when I was walking in it a little while ago, you know, and I backed off because it gets very, very deep. And we're probably, I would guess, 3 blocks from the bay. When it wasn't as deep, I was able to walk out there and look down one of the streets, and I could see a sailboat about 3 blocks away, and I could see it sort of moving in the wind. And it appeared that from where we are, all the way 3 blocks to the bay is underwater like this. I don't think there's any dry.
All right, you can hear about the concerns with storm surge now. Brickell Avenue here in downtown Miami. That's the story here right now, Anderson. Let's go back to you in Tampa.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is that storm surge that's going to come in the Tampa area, it may very well come. The worst of it may come after, even an hour or two after the hurricane force winds have hit at the hardest point. It is safe to say nobody alive in Tampa or in any of this area has ever seen a storm like the one that is headed toward this city, headed toward this area, headed toward the west coast of Florida. 1921 was the last time the city of Tampa was hit by a storm, the Category 3 range. Not a lot of people lived there, but it did extensive damage at that time. So people anybody who thinks they know what is coming and knows what to expect, unless they have experienced this somewhere else, they've never seen it hit Tampa like this in the coming hours. Going to take a short break. Our coverage continues.
It was with a storm like this in mind that those codes were toughened. And this is the first major test of those new codes. How will this state, especially its new construction, stand up to a significant hurricane like Irma? So that is going to be very telling in the days ahead once the storm has passed and once we get a sense of what has been left behind and what has been taken away. The other issue here too is there are so many multiple levels of worry. Storm surge being an obvious one in an area that is so heavily coastal. But for instance, there was a worry here in Miami about construction cranes. There are a couple dozen cranes in the sky now in Miami. The city's going through a bit of a building boom. Those cranes are massive, very heavy. The counterbalance alone can weigh 30,000 pounds. The fear was that those cranes could topple. They are designed to spin in high winds, but the winds are only the cranes are only designed to absorb winds of 145 miles an hour. It does appear, of course, that those winds will not be as strong, at least here in Miami. But I've seen a video of at least one crane that appears to have toppled, not toppled to the ground, but toppled over. And that, of course, was a major worry. You don't want to be anywhere near one of those things if it collapses. So emergency officials have so many different levels of threats and risks to monitor all at once. And of course, there are bound to be surprises, both good and bad. The hope, of course, is that there are more good ones than bad ones. Jeff?
In Midtown after Superstorm Sandy, it's a dangerous situation that they're watching out for. But at this point, they just have to hope for the best, because you're not going to secure those in anymore. It is a test for the infrastructure in Miami. It's an even bigger test right now for Tampa St. Pete, which does not have some of the same strict building codes, and where these buildings may be in even more danger today as we see Irma As we've been saying, that water is going to get pushed out first from that storm surge, and then it's going to get sucked back in. And the storm surge, again, being what will probably be the biggest threat, followed by the wind and then also the rain. I know Eric Fisher, who's chief meteorologist at our Boston station,
area, and he joins us now from downtown Tampa. John?
What's it like up in Orlando where you're at right now? You know, because we're starting.
Anthony, let's talk about one of the specific vulnerabilities here in Tampa. Much of the city, the downtown area is vulnerable, but this is Tampa General Hospital. It sits right here. Leave. The hospital is not being evacuated. It has about 1,100 beds, some 900 patients still there when tropical storm, when the winds here rise to tropical storm level. Now it's low tide here now. When the storm surge comes in, however, when the storm surge comes in here, another important facility could be threatened, and that's the Tampa Convention Center. Now, even if the Convention Center survives the flood, all events planned there into next month have now been canceled, and it may take even longer than that for Tampa to clean up, depending on what hits us here over the next 24, 36 hours. Anthony?
John Blackstone in Tampa. Thanks, John. We want to go back to Jeff Glore now, who's just gotten a pretty ominous morning from where he is in St. Pete.
Yeah, Anthony, we just heard from the sheriff who said that when this storm passes, they are going to seal off the county. Nobody in, nobody out until they do a damage assessment. They are going to seal off this county once the storm passes to make sure that it is safe to move around. They're worried about trees being down. They're worried about everything being thrown into the road. They are worried about so much as Irma has yet to bring her worst into the Tampa-St. Pete area, where we're expecting these tropical storm force winds probably between 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper. This is State of the Union. You're watching breaking news coverage now. The eye of Hurricane
of hurricane force winds. I am standing next to a steel rail, so Mom, holding on. But we do want to show you what it's like here, because in part we want people in the West to understand what is coming your way and what we are experiencing here in Miami Beach. It's being viewed by the city as really dodging a major bullet here. We have not seen a storm surge. There is hurricane force winds. It is very strong. You can see that signs have toppled over. And I want you to take a look down the street. A major concern here is flying debris. You can see all those branches. All of that has been flying through the streets. We've seen some of it in the form of broken street signs. So that is a major concern. But trying to stand upright is almost impossible if you're not standing next to something. So this is a reason why the Miami Beach Police Department and the Fire Department say that they are no longer able to respond to calls. You physically cannot respond to calls as emergency personnel without putting yourself into danger. That's why there was a mandatory evacuation. We have heard from the police and fire. They themselves are hunkered down because they simply cannot respond to any sort of emergencies. As far as what they did overnight, though, Jake, they did try to put out some fires. They did try to make some immediate rescues, but we have not heard of any major injuries or fatalities, at least here in Miami Beach.
Okay,
so what we are expecting for the next few hours, yes.
Just hold on one second, because I want to bring in John Berman, who is right next door in Miami, and I want to keep both of you with us right now. Berman, tell us about where you are right now.
I'm in the wind, Jake. The wind is gusting pretty fiercely here. I'm in Miami, close to downtown Miami right now, getting some pretty fierce gusts. Two things happening in downtown Miami we need to tell you about. Kyung-La out there in Miami Beach not getting storm surge. We are getting it here. There were pictures we showed just moments ago on CNN from Brickell Boulevard. Water waist deep in some places there. Biscayne Bay has broken through in some areas and starting to flood the streets. The wind just pushing the water up into the streets. And behind me, I don't know if you can see right now, those jet skis, the water lapping up over that dock right there. There are all these docks you can't see that have been covered by water, and the water creeping up ever so slowly here. We're watching it very, very carefully. The other story in downtown Miami is the wind. All morning we were getting reported wind gusts of more than 100 miles an hour in the tops of high rises, and that now has had a consequence. This crane collapse, or crack, depending on how you want to call it, at 300 Biscayne Boulevard. That crane, the boom, has sort of fallen off the rest of the crane, appears to be resting on top of this building under construction right now. We don't know if it's still attached in any way, whether by cables or anything else, but there are dangling cables around there. City officials telling people not to go anywhere near that area. Frankly, if you were smart right now in Miami, you'd be inside. There's no reason to go outside, not with the winds blowing the way they are, and not with these reports now, Jake, of storm surge on some of the main streets here in the downtown area. The areas, by the way, where there were mandatory evacuations because they were worried about just this type of thing, Jake.
All right, John Berman, stay with us. I want to go to Chad Myers in the CNN Severe Weather Center. Chad, give us the big picture perspective on what we see going on. We saw Kyung La in Miami Beach taking the brunt of it when it comes to wind. We see John Berman in Miami getting wind and also storm surge. What is going on?
I will try to be brief because I have stood where those people have been standing in a hurricane and know how annoying it is for someone standing in a dry studio to keep talking when you're getting blasted. Miami going to see wind gusts probably now in excess of 15 miles per hour, greater than where you are now. Key Deer International Wildlife, that would be Big Pine Key, that is 120 miles per hour. Miami International, 94. The higher you go up in elevation across those buildings, the higher the wind goes. Here's where the wind is right now, right through Key Biscayne and into Miami Beach. Our Kyung La is there. Kyung, I know it looks bad right now for you, but your winds are going up 20 miles per hour from here. I need you in a safe place.
Kyung La, you heard that?
We are standing next to, yes, we are standing next to the Betsy Hotel where we're staying. There are some safe barriers. I have a steel rail that I'm holding on to. There's no projectile that I can see that's heading our way. But what I can tell, oh my goodness. Okay, so this is incredibly, and I'm just gonna call it, this is stupid. These two guys going out in the rain and in these storms. First of all, I don't know how they're staying up on two wheels. Do not do that. They may be joy seekers, but that is absolutely unsafe. The Miami Beach police and fire have said if those two guys get injured, they will absolutely not be able to help them out. They stop responding to emergency calls. If you dial 911 here, they can't physically get to you. So if you are preparing on the west side for these hurricane force winds, remember, you've got to make sure that you are in a safe place, that you know what you're doing. Do not be riding your bicycle out here. The winds that we're experiencing here, it makes it very difficult for me to stand. If I didn't have this steel railing, I'd be flying. What you can see happening to these trees here, they're just blowing in the wind. When we were out here earlier yesterday, some of those trees, I don't know if it's those in particular, but there were trees up and down this particular street that had coconuts on them. Those are long gone because they've flown in the air. The debris is a major issue. The fire department told us overnight that they had transformers blow, they had some fires, a gas leak, people who had to be rescued out of an elevator. They tried to respond to as much as they could, try to help as many people as they could, but then all of this started. So, yeah, you know, you just want to try to stay inside if possible. And then for the west side, you see what we're going through. Part of the reason why we do this is to show you and to put it into perspective of what's coming your way.
And Kyung La has been reporting all morning. It's been more than 3 or 4 hours that the city of Miami Beach announced that first responders will not leave. So if people like those cyclists or anyone else does get injured, sadly, they will be on their own. Chad Myers, back to you in the CNN Severe Weather Center. Where is the storm headed exactly at this point?
It is headed to Naples. It is headed to Everglades City. It is headed into the Everglades National Park. When it parallels Miami, that will be its closest approach. And what Kyung Law is experiencing now is about 80. When the storm gets closer to her, it will be 100. Berman, you've seen about 75 to 80 right now. You're going to 100 as well. The problem I have with your live shot is that water will still come up 2 to 3 feet, John. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, Chad, we're watching that very, very carefully. If the water does increase any much more, we will move inland to higher ground. We have a route planned out here, Chad. We do appreciate that. And again, you know, the winds here already strong enough to topple that crane, Jake.
All right, Kyung La is standing more safely off to the side there, and we thank her for that. Kyung, I don't know if you can hear us still. But feel free to stay out of the shot.
I can hear you. Hey,
yes. No, stay out of the shot. Kyung, stay out of the shot. Just tell us what you see, but there's no need for you to subject yourself to 80 mile-per-hour winds. John Berman, let me ask you, the storm surge, which is anticipated more where you are, and you say you're witnessing it, than in other parts of Florida. When that comes, and Chad, feel free to weigh in after John, when that comes, does it come gradually or does it come like a giant wave?
It comes gradually, Jake, but in some cases, like we saw in Brickell Boulevard downtown, it moves up gradually, but when it gets over a barrier, it will flow in fairly rapid fashion. But people have been warned about this for days and days, Jake. I mean, that area of Brickell Boulevard is in the mandatory evacuation zone. Hopefully, people got out. That is why authorities wanted these areas clear. You know, they don't want you living in an island on a high-rise building right now when you can't get down past the first floor. So hopefully people did heed those warnings and move out. And as far as where we are, and Chad was talking about the fact that it may go up another 2 feet or so. Again, we've been watching it. This is, 3 feet higher than it was when we started. There's some tidal issues to work in here, but we've seen it coming. And if it does move up, or when it does move up, we will move to higher ground, Jake.
All right, good. And Chad Myers, I know from covering previous storms, I know what a 110 mile per hour wind feels like. It feels like your face is being ripped off your skull. I experienced that in a wind tunnel, not in an actual hurricane, but in a wind tunnel, to try to explain it to the public what it feels like. Randy Kay did that a few days ago. That is what the winds are going to be like where John and Kyung are soon enough.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we're already at 90 now. Every gust is 90 miles per hour. Every time a cell comes on shore, a line of the outer bands comes on shore, the wind goes to 90 to 95. And then we may even get to 100 to 105. Here is the bay that we've been worried about. This is Biscayne Bay. Kendall, you're already seeing winds over 90. Easy, because you're closer to the eye. Before you go Coral Gables, again, easy, 90, 95. Then the farther you go west, the higher the winds are. But it's this open area here. Here's Government Cut, where the cruise ships park. This is all open through the Key Biscayne National Park. All of this water is pouring into Key Biscayne and into Biscayne Bay, across the bay and across and into Miami. And that's what's flooding now. This wind direction will not change for 2 to 3 more hours, and the water is going to continue to come up. We're at 3.5 feet right now, surge.
Chad, let me interrupt you for 1 second.
Easily
you're talking about that surge, and we're looking at images right now from a CNN affiliate in downtown Miami, and the streets look like a river. That surge has arrived.
It absolutely has. Here's the map that I made 3 days ago. What we expect with a 6-foot surge. All of downtown Miami will be covered in this blue color that you see there. That's the water depth if the water goes to 6 feet. Right now it's 5.5. That's where the water is at this exact point and still going up.
Berman, the water where you are, obviously the water is the deadliest force in all of this, as horrific as the winds are. It is the storm surge that ends up taking the most lives in hurricanes such as these. And where you are, you're seeing the water surge.
Yes, you're seeing the water rise slowly, Jake, and it's been rising slowly over the last several hours. What Chad was talking about right there is just where it overflowed some areas as it came up and rushed down into Brooklyn Boulevard. That's 5.5 feet, as Chad was saying. You know, they've been predicting as much as 6 feet of storm surge, but there were mandatory evacuations for some 600,000 people in Miami-Dade County, Jake. And those 600,000 people were told to evacuate because of fears of storm surge. It's not the wind. You hide from the wind, you run from the water because there's nothing you can do. Once the water starts coming, you know, if you live in one of the bottom floors, the water is going to come in to your apartment. If you live on the higher floors, you won't be able to get out, and the first responders won't be able to get to you. Hopefully, again, most people did listen to those warnings and did evacuate. Some of the biggest evacuations this county has ever seen. People sheltering now inland, hopefully not heading to Tampa to shelter, because that's a whole other world of problems that you're going to get in the next few hours right now. But it is remarkable that all this has happened, Jake, even though the eye of this storm did not hit Miami. There's been concern about that. This storm moved west, heading for Fort Myers and Tampa. Not the worst of the storm, but we still damage that this huge, wide storm has caused and is still causing, Jake.
All right, let me go back to Kyung La, who's in Miami. And Kyung, we see in different parts of the city of Miami, where you are right now, streets have turned to rivers, that the water, the surge is coming and it's flooding parts of downtown Miami.
And I can't see that from where we are. What I can tell you is the last time I checked in with the Miami Beach Fire Department, they said that as far as massive flooding, that is not something that they have experienced as of yet. But as Chad pointed out, the stronger winds still have yet to come. When my producer, Tristan Smith, went over to the beach to check out the storm surge, he didn't see all that much, that the beach looked like it had been beat up, but we didn't see the massive 5-foot, 10-foot storm surge that was predicted. So, you know, what we are seeing and experiencing here right now is generally more wind. There was just a tweet by the police department asking people to remain inside because of the severity of the winds. And I also want to tell people who are watching this is that this is not the worst area to stand in. If you walk through some of the city streets, through the commercial districts of Miami Beach, the wind there is unbelievable. It has created wind tunnels because of the buildings. And that's where a lot of people, some of the people who live in high rises, live. People who have chosen not to heed the mandatory evacuation order. It's much worse over there. So it's far more dangerous in the commercial Miami Beach districts, and so that's why you're hearing so many, why you're seeing so many tweets from the police as far as the fire to please stay inside.
All right, Kyung La in Miami Beach, where the winds are horrific right now and projectiles are a real risk. John Berman in Miami, the city proper, where it's both the wind and the water. John, the water behind you that you say has been rising over the last several hours, how close is it to ground level?
Well, look, so what this is a marina right now. So the marina slopes down to really the water's edge right now. And I'll walk over it. You can see this cement where it ends. I'm not going to get too close right now. After the cement, there is, 2 feet to the water right now. At low tide, there's probably 5 feet. So it's up 3 feet, and right there where you can't see, that rope, you see that rope? That's actually tied to a dock that normally is above the water right now. It's not above the water now, it's a foot underwater. So you can see the where the water has creeped up. Those jet skis, they're attached also to a dock where the water is lapping over right now. We actually have seen a dock detach off into the bay here. That's what we've seen in terms of the water. As far as the winds, Jake, this is as strong as I've seen. I mean, the wind has not blown like this yet here in Miami. And Chad says we're going to see another 10 to 15 miles an hour over the next couple hours. That's going to be pretty strong. And again, remarkable given that the worst of the storm didn't even hit here, Jake.
And John, we know Kyung La is covering the storm from the hotel. I mean, she's right outside the hotel, but she's staying in that hotel, and that is where she can get to safety at a moment's notice if need be. What about you? people at home are watching and they're wondering about you. How quickly can you get out of there, and how quickly can you get to a safe place?
Talking about my mom and dad, who are both watching right now, we have cars parked around the corner on slightly higher ground. This water get much closer, we will simply pick up our stuff. Our hotel is a block away. We have another safe location to go to as soon as we need to. Our camera undercover right now as well. We have a team here more protected by the wind a little bit than I am right now. But no, we have a plan. There is a way to do this. We're doing it safely. We're out here so people can see the danger, so they can understand why the officials in this city and state have told them to stay inside, or in some cases, told to evacuate and get to safer, higher ground, Jake.
And John, just to explain to the people at home, if the winds that you are experiencing right now are somewhere in the 80 to 90 mile per hour territory, tell us what that feels like. Tell us what the experience is like, and why it's dangerous, even beyond the storm surge, which is the most dangerous.
Well, you have to do this ridiculous dance, Jake, where you're leaning into the wind the whole time, and then when you, or in some cases can swirl, so you're in one way and then the wind will come from behind you and push you around some more. That's not even the real concern. The real concern is projectiles, right? I don't know how far I can go back here where the camera can still see me, but this right here is an awning that snapped off the building. That used to be up there. Now, we going that way, so we knew we weren't going to hit by it. And down there, you can see two pieces of this metal flashing. That also has flown off the building. That's a giant spear. It would fly through the sky if you were standing behind it right now. You have to be very, very careful of that. And the rain itself, you know, when it comes at you, you know, at 70 miles an hour or more, it's not a pleasant feeling, Jake, I can tell you that.
No, it feels like little needles going into your face. Let's go back to Chad for 1 second. Chad, the people in Miami, not just John, and the people in Miami Beach, not just Kyung, how much longer are they going to be going through this? And we know this isn't even the eye of the storm. This isn't even the worst of it.
This is not the closest approach to the eye of the storm yet, so it still goes worse from here. Exactly. I would say we get this for another 6 hours before it even starts to go down. And that's the real reason we don't want you in your home if it's not a strong house. This is a long duration. This is not a tornado that goes through in 17 seconds and it's over. This goes on and on and on. Now I want you to just think about this for a second. Grab a cup of coffee and blow on the top of a cup of coffee and to try to cool it off. The waves that your breath makes will blow the coffee to the other side of the coffee cup. That's what's happening here. The waves, because of the wind, are blowing the ocean on the other side of the coffee cup. And there's our Kyung Law right there. What's happening here, the water is piling up, but it's going around here through Government Cut, and it's piling here. So if we keep pushing the air from our coffee cup or the wind, it's going to pile up here. Not so much in Miami Beach because it's going to go around. Not so much on Fisher Island because it's going to go around. This is the area, right there is our John Berman. This is the area that's flooding right now. It's the Brickell area of Miami and also even farther to the north. We're seeing those now waves and storm surge numbers at about 5.5 feet. That's enough to get over some seawalls there in downtown Miami.
All right, Chad, thank you so much. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to check in with some people on the west coast of Florida, where the eye of the hurricane is headed. Keep in mind all this horror that we're seeing in Miami and Miami Beach. This isn't even the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm has gone through the Keys. We don't know exactly what the situation is like there, but we're going to now experience, the country's going to experience the eye of the storm hitting the west coast of Florida. Stay with us.
And really assess exactly what they need, but they know there's water over US 1. I mean, if you think about what do we have to do down there, we got to make sure we get US 1 open. There's one road down there, right? We got to get make sure all those bridges, survive this, because one bridge, then everybody south of the bridge is stranded. We've got to find out what the airports are like. So the storm is still passing there. You know, the storm surge, we'll see how bad that is down there. So, but you can watch, what you see on TV is exactly what you're hearing from Miami. They've got a lot of wind, and they'll get the same storm surge as the storm moves north.
Sure. Now, up here in the Panhandle, obviously the storm's kind of taking people by surprise. I think even Tallahassee thought there was going to be a near miss a couple days ago. Now the city's in kind of the center of the cone. What preparations are being done as of right now, especially with gas? Because I know there's a bit of a shortage.
We have been working on getting gas into the state for this entire week. Unfortunately, now our ports are closed, which were our primary ports for gas are Tampa and Port Everglades. We are the Corps here. We are working with them to make sure as soon as the storm passes, we can get those ports open to get fuel here. We will provide escorts again. Law enforcement escorts to the carriers to get to the gas stations as much as possible. I waived the fuel tax to see if we can get more gas into the state. We've done everything we can to get as much fuel here as possible. I know there has been there's been lines, there's been outages, but we're going to work every day to keep doing it. It'll be really important to get the ports back open, and I know it's something that the ports have already talked to the Army Corps to make sure they know a process to get that done as quickly as they can.
Governor, in the immediate aftermath, after the storm is cleared out, well, especially for South Florida right now, the people that went to shelters, how long could they expect to either sit in place and wait to say here that their neighborhood is okay to at least check out or go back into?
Well, clearly every county is going to be a little bit different what happened in their county. If you're in the inner counties, if you're in the middle of the state, it's probably going to be a little bit different because of mostly wind and some rain. You won't have the storm surge. So what'll happen in every county, they'll try to get let people know what happened. But the issues that every family is going to deal with is, one, do you have power back? And if you don't have power, do you want to stay in a shelter? That's one. Two, we've got to make sure we have fuel for everybody. We've got to make sure we have water and food for everybody. So we've pre-positioned assets. FEMA's pre-positioned assets. We got to get those things as fast as we can to the southern part of the state. But all the assets for this, it's slowed down the fact that this has covered the whole state. And so as you try to move the assets down to the southern part of the state, we got to let this storm pass, so it's safe to drive on our roads and things like that. So everybody's going to have to be very patient.
In Hardin County, Governor, a sheriff's deputy was killed in a storm-related collision. What type of guidance is being given to first responders? Should they be on the road right now? At this point, when the storm's coming short.
So, in every county, if you talk to the sheriff's department, every county, the police department, they have protocols for when people are supposed to be on the road. As you know, in the middle of the storm, you can't drive certain vehicles because of the wind, and whether it's the wind or the rain. But in every county, they make those decisions.
Governor, it's been almost a week, 5 days at least, since we've been waiting for this storm, and now it's here. I know you've been all over the state. What kind of a toll is it taking on you, and what have you learned about the state and the people?
Well, one thing when you go through this, what you'll learn is you have a really good state emergency management team. Brian Kuhn and his team, they do a really good job. If you go around the state and whether you're talking to the emergency management officials locally or you're talking to the law enforcement, they're absolutely committed. Also, you have to be impressed with your National Guard. These are individuals that are showing up. They're coming on active duty when they don't know what's going to happen to their own family. The other thing is, I want to thank President Trump. I've talked to him pretty much every day, and I've talked to the FEMA administrator almost, I think, every day. You've got FEMA officials here. People, but that's true for every federal agency. People are working hard. There's a lot of unknowns, and that's what you worry about.
Unfortunately, you can also see a few people also trying to walk through this water's not recommended, of course, but for people who are familiar, this is the area where the grocery store Publix is. Now, we've been trying to get the best position out here, Jake, to show you both the ponding and the surge. It's a little difficult just because there's a lot of trees down, there's a lot of debris. You can also see lots of water on this end. A lot of the skyline from Miami, you can see also here, a lot of these residential buildings. But this is a huge problem, of course. course, for Miami, because these roads are ponding, they are receiving a lot of surge from the ocean. I'm about 3 to 4 blocks from the ocean, and you can see that ponding is occurring, surge is coming through, and, you know, I mean, the 16 counties in South Florida have a system of about 2,100 canals, 2,000 berms and levees that protect the city. Those structures have to work to drain all this water. So a huge feat, Jake. Irma testing the structures here in Miami and also testing the decisions made by people, both by public officials and people who decided not to evacuate when an evacuation order was issued. Jake?
And Rosa Flores, we're also seeing these images from our affiliate WSBN that show a street in downtown Miami basically having turned into a river. Do you know how far away that is from where you are?
That is probably a few streets down. We're a few streets down from Brickell Avenue. We're trying to creep closer and closer. But I'm not sure if we're able to zoom in, but you'll see raging water behind me in the street that's behind me. And again, just to give people a sense of where I'm at, I'm in Brickell and right next to the Publix grocery store. Now, this is both a combination of high winds, the winds pulling the water, ponding, and storm surge. That's the big issue, that all of these three things converge and it creates a huge problem. The other thing, too, is that the drainage system has to work in order for this water to come down. There's a lot of debris. There are trees down. A lot of the times that blocks drains. So even if those drains were working right now, they're being stopped because of it. Now, the South Florida Management District did decrease the levels of the canals, Jake, that weave through the 16 South Florida counties that drain out into the ocean. They lowered those water levels to make sure that there was capacity for those canals to take a lot of the water that you see around me and flush it into the ocean. But when you combine surge, these high winds, and debris that are blocking those drains, it's very difficult for the system to do what it's designed to do.
All right,
Jake?
Rosa Flores, stay safe. She's in the Brickell neighborhood of Miami, the financial district. Let me go to Chad Myers, who's in the CNN Severe Weather Center. Chad, was flooding this bad expected?
Yes, it was. No question about it, Jake. Earlier, the numbers were somewhere between 6 and 10 for Miami, but that's when Miami was getting a direct hit from the eye, or at least a closer hit. And that was about, I would say, 40 to 50 miles farther to the east compared to making landfall over there by Cape Coral and on up toward Punta Gorda as we start to flood the other side. But what's going on right now is the wind is pushing the water into Biscayne Bay and eventually over what is a seawall, but it's very short, and into downtown Miami. That's exactly what we thought when the winds were going to blow this way for such a very long time. Now we have about a 3-foot surge in Miami, but the wind also is pushing this way on the other side. We have a 4-foot inverse surge in Naples. The water is down 4 feet from mean sea level, and that will rush back in as the eye goes by, and then the water will rush out of Miami. But for now, we have at least 5 or 6 more hours of Miami with this water rushing on shore, pushing in the same direction, more rain trying to drain out. That's never going to drain because the wind is blowing from this direction so hard. And then eventually we get up toward Tampa, Sarasota, Anna Maria Island. This is where we're going to see the significant wind damage too. Wind 125. What we're showing you on TV is like 70, 75. And I know Berman was kind of in the wind, but I know he was sheltered because I've stood in that same exact spot. So I know there's kind of a little building there to protect him a little bit, but still all of that debris that was blowing around near Berman, we had to get him out of there. So at least now he's in a safe place. Up to the north, we're moving you now to 8 o'clock tonight. Significant wind in Melbourne, India Atlantic Beach too. And then Tampa, you're right in the middle of this thing. This is what I'm really worried about. So many millions of people, somewhere in the ballpark of 110 to 120 mile per hour winds with wind pushing the water out of Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay may eventually almost empty. And then the storm goes by and it fills back up rather quickly, a surge coming from the other direction after the water has already left. Please don't go into any water. If the water has left, Don't go onto that land where water should be, because that water will be back, and it will be back higher than it was when it left. Jake.
Indeed. In fact, don't leave. Don't go outside.
Right.
Chad Myers, thank you so much. I want to go to Chris Cuomo right now, who's in Naples, one of the towns where the storm is headed. Chris, describe, if you can, for us how conditions have changed just in the last few hours.
Snotty. The wind is picking up. The gusts are measured in excess of 70 miles an hour. The rain has been constant. This is what the vets would call the snap, crackle, and pop phase of the hurricane. You're starting to hear these eerie sounds as branches and part of the structures start to give away. You hear the crackle of the transformers as they start to fail, and you're starting to hear the sounds of the trees falling around you, and it's a little eerie because you have to figure out where these sounds are coming from so you can assess the risk of where they'll fall. And the real problem is, as you were just hearing from Chad, we're still in the measuring blows phase for the West Coast. The water here has been sucked out as well. Ed Lavandera took a drive down to the Gulf side, down a few streets this way. The water has receded significantly, and when it comes back and the energy and the momentum of the storm surge, that's where this situation is going to get very serious here. The other problem is duration. This storm moving as slowly as it is, that means it stays in each area that it hits longer. And that's my concern here, is that all of these trees that are starting to sway in all these parts of these buildings that are getting hit hour after hour, what will happen when this wind almost doubles in terms of the gust? That's the concern from here, Jake.
And Chris, tell us how Naples has prepared for this storm. Have residents taken the evacuation order seriously? We were checking in with Kyung La in Miami Beach just a few minutes ago, and there were two, let's be charitable and call them thrill seekers, literally riding their bikes in Miami Beach. And obviously, Miami Beach hours ago, first responders announced that the winds were such that they were not going to they were not going to be able to go out to save anybody. How are people in Naples hearing the risks?
Nobody's going out. The first responders can't risk it. You know, they are the best of us, as you know. You do such a beautiful job of focusing on their efforts in these situations, Jake. They just can't risk it. The best of us have to be there for the rest of us. So you can't go out in these conditions because you don't know when something's going to fall. Just over my shoulder, this huge tree just went down a little while ago, and they go down unannounced. Trees only go down slowly in movies and when lumberjacks are chopping them down. In these storms, they go down really quickly, so the first responders have to be careful. The city manager was here. They have a good plan, and they got lucky. This is a little bit of a snowbird place, Naples, and it's not as heavily populated right now. And people took early cues and got out of here. So they believe they're significantly evacuated, and that's a good thing. But it's also low-lying, and it is spongy, and there's a lot of it that can get really damaged. That's why Ed Lavandera went down to see what's going on with the water getting sucked out and what that predicts in terms of what we're going to see with storm surge when all that water comes back, as Chad Myers has been instructing us. Ed, can you hear us?
Hey, Chris, I can hear you. We are driving along the western edge of Naples. This is an area that is under mandatory evacuation. You can see the scene here. This is we're about a block off of the water here, and you know we're probably won't be able to do this for much longer here as the conditions have continued to deteriorate. But as we drive along this street here, you can see just even on the initial stages and the early bands of this hurricane as they start approaching southwest Florida, you look out onto the streets. This is exactly how things are quickly falling apart here on this particular street that we're on. You can see the trees that have already started coming down. There's one up ahead here on our right that we're going to have to manage our way to get around here, and this is already starting to be seen all through the city of Naples here. So this is a situation we won't be out here much longer. So this is a down tree here. and we've seen several along this stretch. You can see another one right here off to your right as well. So again, this is just the initial bands of this hurricane, as it is several hours away from making landfall here in southwest Florida, and this gives you a pretty good sense of just how quickly things are going to deteriorate and how dangerous the situation outdoors will be even here in probably the next 7 to 8 hours, Chris.
All right, it's Jake Tapper picking it up from here at Lavandera. Please get someplace safe. Chris Cuomo, we thank you as well. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, we're watching the flooding in Miami. We're watching the outer bands of Hurricane Irma as it begins to hit the west coast of Florida. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hurricane winds probably starting around 7 o'clock tonight and lasting about 8 hours. 7 to 10 up to a foot of rain, inches of rain, and then that surge. And remains one of the big questions, not just what direction the surge goes in depending on where the wind is moving, but how high that surge is going to be. Is it going to be 5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet? Right now, the expectation is that in the Tampa-St. Pete area, it'll be about 5 to 8 feet. But again, this area has not seen a major hurricane since 1921. The population of the Tampa Bay area at that time was 135,000 people. It is nearly 3 million people today. It has changed drastically since then, and the entire region is waiting to see what happens now. Jonathan Vigliotti is also along the Gulf Coast. He is south of us. He is in Naples, which is also going to get it, we expect, very bad. Jonathan?
Yeah, that's correct. And Jeff, right now we're having gusts measuring around 60 miles per hour. They're so fast that the sheriff's office is saying all emergency vehicles are now cleared from the roads. They will not be returning to the streets until that wind dies out, until the storm has long cleared. Concern.
I am in touch with several of our neighbors. We keep checking in. We do have one neighbor that has the type of generator that kicks in immediately after losing the power. And they have indicated, feel free to come by if it gets to be too much for you once the power has gone out.
Okay. Yvonne Pandolfo, thank you so much for letting our viewers in on what you're experiencing there. We wish you the best of luck.
Of Florida, and in many cases those areas are only a couple of feet above sea level on average. Flooding is going to be one of many major worries. Another issue, of course, is loss of power. 1.3 million Floridians are now without power in South Florida. That number is guaranteed to rise, and in some cases those outages could go on for weeks is the fear. 911 responders are still not answering calls. It is simply too dangerous for them to go out once the winds hit 40 miles an hour. That was the threshold beyond which first responders would not venture out themselves, and we passed that threshold hours ago. Mark Rossman, CBS News, Miami.
Yeah, you can really see that storm surge, and what we're really looking at is downtown Miami and the potential for storm surge there, which would be very expensive losses there. Thankfully, it looks mostly of that.
It continues to batter this area, and until it clears, we just don't know how much damage is out there because we're in a safe spot, but we can't really leave this spot to go out and check anything out. And of course, we wouldn't do that. Never want to put ourselves in harm's way and become the story, because we know the sheriff stopped going out here at 45 mile an hour sustained winds, and that was some 12 hours ago, Shepard.
Adam, eventually this storm's going to head to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay itself
is largely dry. Lillian with some video from Tampa Bay now.
Yes, this was taken earlier today, and you can see this Bay area has
shelters
been cleared
are open.
out.
We are told that they are maxed out with about 15,000 people. Officials are warning anybody that's choosing to ridden out this storm in their homes to seek higher ground. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Naples, Florida.
All right, that's Jonathan Vigliotti reporting there from Naples, where you can see the conditions there are deteriorating as we speak. This is still, folks, a Category 4 hurricane.
And
although
breaking news coverage of Hurricane Irma, the extremely dangerous core of the storm is headed for the southwest Florida coast. It made landfall through the Florida Keys a little over 3 hours ago. It's a Category 4 storm. It has 130-mile-per-hour sustained winds, and it's now expected to track up Florida's west coast. Among the cities now facing the greatest danger, Tampa, Florida, and that's where we find CNN anchor Anderson Cooper. Anderson, we've seen the outer bands of this hurricane hit Miami. Chris Cuomo's in Naples. He's starting to feel some of that as well. What about where you are in Tampa?
Yeah, you know, people have been watching the coverage here in Tampa, seeing those images on Brickell, for instance, in Miami with that water, just incredible pictures, that water rushing down the street. That is a hint of what is to come here in Tampa. This is a city that has grown up so fast over the years, a lot of buildings very close to the water, and they have not experienced a storm of this magnitude, a Cat 3 storm, which is what it's expected to be when it hits Tampa, since 1921. It severely damaged the city back then. It obviously was not a very developed city. There weren't a lot of people living here. There was only one fatality. But, you know, we heard Chad Myers earlier talking about the water in Tampa Bay being sucked out. This is the Hillsborough River, and I just wanted you to show this water is moving out toward Tampa Bay. And as we have been here over the last couple hours, we've been watching the water actually go down. You can see on the other side of the river, you can kind of see a sandy embankment. We couldn't see that when we first came out here a couple of hours ago. And as Chad pointed out, importantly, all that water that's going out, that's going to rush back in along with that storm surge. It was expected to be 5 to 8 feet yesterday. We're still waiting. We have no idea how much that's going to be. And with the winds, waves on top of that, so how much water is going to be coming is a huge question. Even in the best of times in Tampa, they've been, in a heavy rainfall, they've been having problems with flooding and getting rid of that water. Same in St. Petersburg and the surrounding areas. There's 700 miles of coastline around Tampa Bay. It gives you a sense of so many houses built along those 700 miles of coastline. With all that water, the damage could be extreme. I want to go to the mayor, Bob Buckhorn. Mayor, you have been raising red flags about this. I saw a quote from you, I think it was last year. You were standing on the steps at City Hall, and you said if a Category 3 storm directly hit Tampa, that area in downtown would be under 15 feet of water. How concerned are you about the flooding potential in Tampa?
Anderson, I'm hugely concerned. I mean, that is our worst nightmare. We are about to get our own version of what hell looks like over the next 24 hours. Between the winds and the rain and
all the hurricanes I've been in, I still haven't seen anybody walking around. Thank God they're not trying to walk in this stuff. Out there right now, a big tree has come down, another tree over there. Again, and this is the area that's the newer part of Key Largo, so the building codes obviously were all followed. We just don't know what we're going to find when we get to some of the older areas, some of the mobile home areas. You hope people didn't try to ride this thing out, Shepard, because as you can tell from the video, it just continues to batter us here.
It has. A quick update for our viewers. This from the Jacksonville area from the National Weather Service. There is a tornado now. It's a water spout at the moment. The National Weather Service says it's expected to move ashore as a tornado in Crescent Beach, Summerhaven, Marineland. That's in the Jacksonville area between now and 1 o'clock Eastern time. So over the next 30 minutes, a severe storm and tornado warning now. Crescent Beach, Summerhaven, Marineland. If you are in those areas, get to a safe space. The National Weather Service believes a tornado is headed your way. Adam, lots of violent tornadoes out of this thing.
Yeah, Shepard, and it makes sense why. I mean, you see the winds, while it's still coming from my right, you're starting to see them to swirl, so I got to believe that means it's starting to switch out. As you were talking about the other areas, I'm looking out over here, you're talking big pieces of metal now, Shepard. 6 feet by 4 feet, that one looks like just twisted. It blew into a tree down here to my left. As I look back out behind me, you see parts of roofs torn off. And again, these are the newer parts of the area of Key Largo where we're located. And we're not near the eye as much as Key West was. And some of the video we've seen out out of there is just brutal. And as you go south Isla Mirada and other places, we've been told they're getting hammered as well. No way that anybody can go out and help anybody in this. And we know that the emergency services here said they would stop at 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And again, that was a long time ago. But Shepard, I know you see the video. We can't see the actual. We can't see the actual. Holy smoke! We can't see the radar. You're saying it's passing us. We still haven't had that switch yet. You can tell it's still coming from my right to my left, which is basically east to west, Shepard.
Sounds like it won't be long now. Adam, your pictures are amazing. We've been watching in downtown Miami, and just moments ago while you were speaking, we were also watching in northeast Miami-Dade County, where the waters have just been kicking up very high. This is dangerous. This is in Miami itself. Turn around, don't drown is what the National Weather Service is asking us to remind our viewers. If you're out and about in this, they say you shouldn't be. And if so, waters are rising across South Florida now, just as predicted. Storm surge is coming in. And as a result, their plea is turn around, don't drown, because the waters are coming up so quickly, as they are in the Brickell section of Miami. Some live pictures through WSVN 7 there. Let's look.
So they're not even that close to the water. Look how far, Diana, that water has made it, and look how high it's gone.
And one perspective that we can give
high it's gone.
and one perspective that we can give you. I don't know if you can see.
Particularly strong gusts. Sorry, guys. There's another sign behind it that is completely toppled. No structural damage at the hotel that we're staying, just minor, but it's some of the awnings that are on the roof of the hotel, and it's just getting more and more intense here.
We're deployed throughout the hurricane zone. Manny Bojorquez is in Naples, which could get a big brunt of this storm and is already getting that right now. Actually, we're going to go to Manny Bojorquez is in Fort Lauderdale. Manny?
We're told about this. Everyone had concerns about this beforehand, but some of those cranes they weren't able to get out in time. So they told everyone, if you're living near a crane, this is especially urgent to evacuate.
Yeah, this is a dangerous situation, of course, but we have been talking about this for days. There are about 24 of these cranes spread out around Miami-Dade County. There are a lot more up in Broward County and Palm Beach County. That's the sort of that goes along with the boom in development that we have experienced here. That's the good part of it. The bad part of it is that when a storm like Irma moves its way through, these cranes can really become killers under certain circumstances. And so we're going to keep our eye on this situation, and we'll update you as we learn more about the building manager and the company that owns this building and is operating that crane to let you know when they're going to be able to get up there to try to fix this situation.
Yeah, and right now we want to go to Hank Tester. He has been out here taking a live look right now at Fort Lauderdale. You see the water on the camera there, and you see it also shaking, an indication that it is very windy there. The skies are gray, and it is not the time to go outside.
Yep, I've got some friends in Fort Lauderdale who have told me that this is now the strongest winds that they have felt in Fort Lauderdale. These gusts that are coming through right now and over the last 20 minutes or so are the strongest that they've experienced in the storm right now.
Breaking news in our coverage of devastating Hurricane Irma as it begins to plow through Florida. Strong, dangerous winds continue to increase over all of southern Florida. The streets of downtown Miami are now flooding. Brian Todd is enduring the wind of one of the outer bands of the hurricane. He's in West Palm Beach on the east coast of Florida. Brian, what are you going through there?
Well, Jake, we're inside the window now of the most intense hurricane force activity that we're probably going to get for the next several hours. We are dealing also with tornadic activity. We're told that pop-up tornadoes are going to be hitting us for much of the day, and it feels like we're getting some of that now. But if you look behind me, look at the wind here. Look at the intensity of the wind. That palm tree there looks like it could come down. These palm fronds that are flying from these trees have, along with the coconuts, have become projectiles. We've had to make our way around some of those. And if you see over here, we're going to walk a little bit to my left, your right. These street signs here are really wobbling. They could become uprooted any moment. Now we're getting pelted with a really heavy rain squall. These stanchions that are supporting the traffic lights are wobbling. I just talked to the mayor, Jerry Moyo, the mayor of West Palm Beach. She is fearful that this street, Flagler Street, along the Intercoastal Waterway is going to get flooded. We see some water on the street now, but we're just now getting to the beginning of the wind activity and the storm surge on the Intercoastal Waterway, which is just over here. I'm going to walk toward it a little bit. If we can stay standing, we're really getting nailed here with some intense wind and rain. Also, Jake, I just talked to a fire official, one of the top fire chiefs of West Palm Beach. He said that they have, I asked him about the construction cranes that are right near here. We might be able to get a glimpse of one over my left shoulder. There's one right up there. People here have been very concerned about that, especially since we reported that crane cracking in Miami. The fire chief tells us that they have just done a survey of these cranes. They're okay for now. They're monitoring them closely, but there are apartment buildings right next to these cranes, Jake, some people in these apartments have evacuated, others have not. So we're going to be looking at those cranes pretty closely.
All right, Brian Todd, and let me bring in meteorologist Bob Ryan, past president of the American Meteorological Society. What goes through your mind when you're watching this hurricane, Hurricane Irma? You've covered dozens of hurricanes. Is this one more severe, more frightening than previous?
I think with the population growth that we've seen in Florida and along the coast, and also the number of people who have never experienced something like that, that's the danger. Forecastable. And as we heard, all of the authorities taking all the proper steps for preparation. But you can't prepare for something that's once in your lifetime. Folks that have gone through this or going through this will probably never take a second chance.
And what is it about Irma that makes it a once in a lifetime storm? Obviously, the magnitude of it.
I think when Senator McCain was here, he said it's the size of Arizona. So you had hurricanes like Andrew, which was a ferocious storm, but smaller. This is a monster, which is actually continuing to draw in moisture from Cuba and from the Gulf of Mexico. That's why the east side, Chad talked about, the east side is so dangerous, and that's why Miami is getting it so bad. But the eye wall, the heart of that storm, is still yet to go into Marco Island and on the west coast. So it's going to be a long day, a long night.
Yeah, as devastating as this is just the beginning. And Bob, let me show you those pictures from WSVN, if we could put those back up on the left side of the screen of downtown Miami flooding those streets that look like a river. I mean, this is just unbelievable. This is in downtown Miami.
And it's 100 miles. It was 100 miles away from but those east to southeasterly winds, as Chad, just continue to pile it up. And on the other side, the west side, if the core goes just to the west of Tampa, once those winds shift around, it could be like almost a tidal wave of water coming in later on tonight. And unfortunately, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night in the morning when it's dark. Any attempts at rescue will be just terrible, terrible.
It's a devastating storm, and we're just beginning to see the start of it as it starts barreling through Florida, even though it is going on the west side of Florida because of the outer bands of this enormous hurricane. It is also affecting the east. Bob Ryan, thank you so much. Our breaking news coverage of Hurricane Irma continues as the storm roars through Florida. Stay with us.
This is a quest to explore the wonders of our world before
That's right. We have another one from West Inn. This is Vacation Village. This is from Francesco Caieta. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. You see the trees just being battered there by the wind, and it looks like he is inside. Hopefully those are hurricane-proof windows. I'm sure they are. Thank you for sending this to us, too, from the balcony.
Let's take a look over a little east in Broward County, Cooper City, or south. Cindy Schmidt has sent us this picture of tree damage, and I guess this is a yard in her neighborhood that the ground around here has been because of
and just the power of that wind. The power, the force of that wind is just it's just incredible. And to give you an idea of how big it is, you can see there's like it looks like almost a 2-story house behind it that you can barely see poking out the top, and that's on the tree when the tree is sideways. So it gives you an idea of how big and massive that tree was, and was still blown over. Hopefully not onto that house, but we can just barely see the roof peeking out over the top.
Thanks for that picture, Cindy, from Cooper City. This is from Sabrina Kreis, who is in East Fort Lauderdale. So she's right by the water, and she sent us this video and some nice landscaping outside there, Sabrina. I wonder how it's going to hold up as we take a look at these pictures from East Fort Lauderdale, where there has been a lot of wind and a lot of rain, and it's going to continue with those conditions, and they're going to be worsening as the day goes on. We saw Hank's shot just a minute ago from that report where there was a lull, and I think that the concern that a lot of officials have is that people will take that as a reason, as an excuse to step outside for a moment and to survey the damage that may have been done to their homes or to their neighborhood, just because there's a lull.
Things really heating up there in Miami with Hurricane Irma still a Category 4. That was our coverage from our Miami station, WFOR.
Here right now with CBS News weather producer David Parkinson with the latest on what is happening with Irma as it tracks its way up the western coast of Florida. So David, what's
ready? We've been ready.
Well, understood. I know how much
You know,
really getting difficult can be. The municipalities along the southwest coast. You guys have been through this before.
Yes, sir.
Well, you don't want to be out anywhere in a storm, and all the hurricanes I've been in, I still haven't seen.
We've opened 10 shelters throughout the Lee County area, and right now housing approximately 30,000 people. Some of these were specific shelters designated for special needs and also pets. We had mandatory evacuations already done yesterday in our low-lying areas, our mobile home parks, our barrier islands, and we also had mandatory evacuation in an area we call our Area B, which is basically the area that lines the Caloochalachi River. And our officers are out there
watching and waiting. There are some of the outer bands of the storm have brought some light rains compared to what is to come, and people here know that. The pictures that we have been watching out of Miami on Brickell Boulevard, water just pouring down the street. That's where we find our John Berman right now. John, I mean, you know, again, the people in Tampa who, you know, luckily still have electricity are able to watch